Deep within you, beneath the noise of daily worries, there is a quiet light that has been patiently waiting for you to return. It is a gentle yet powerful wisdom, a silence that knows the path of your soul, even in the moments when you think you are lost. Through the years, you have walked many crossroads, carrying fears and burdens no one could see, and sometimes even you forget that you were given an invisible strength from the very beginning. You may believe that peace comes only when life on the outside becomes stable, when work is steady, family is calm, and finances feel safe. But peace does not wait for you outside. It waits for you within. And abundance is the same. It is not a gift of luck, not the result of a tiring race, but a right written into your inner being from the moment your soul appeared in this world. You do not need to fight to become worthy. You only need to remember what has always been yours. Every cell in your body listens to the thoughts you repeat. Every emotion you nurture shapes the path you will walk next. The subconscious mind works like a doorway leading to a treasure you once forgot. That treasure is not closed because you are unworthy. It is closed because you have not yet knocked, have not spoken its name, have not placed your hand on the door and whispered that you are ready. When you change the way you see yourself, the world will begin to change with you. This is not magic. It is a natural law. What you hold as truth in your heart will slowly become the shape of your outer life. And you do not need to look for it somewhere far away. It is already within you, waiting for your agreement, waiting for the moment you realize you were never forgotten. I am not here to offer empty promises or impossible formulas. I simply want to remind you of a gentle truth that life sometimes makes you forget. You were born with a spiritual inheritance, a hidden flow that never stops, never runs dry, always ready to lift you whenever you return to your inner home. And your new journey begins the moment you listen to that quiet call from deep within, calling you to come back to receive what has always belonged to you. Now I invite you to step into this journey with me, softly, slowly, without pressure. Just a new way of opening your eyes to see that life has never closed its doors to you, and the right to flourish has never left your side, not even for a moment. When human beings forget where they come from, you and I are living in a time when people have more tools than ever before. Phones, social media, endless buses and trains, bright billboards across the city. Everything seems to tell us that we must move faster, do more, and become some perfect version of ourselves. Yet when night falls and the lights finally fade, so many hearts lie still in their own darkness, wondering why they still feel empty, why they still feel lost, why they still feel like they do not belong anywhere. I have met many people like that. They have a good job and a steady income, yet life feels like a wide, cold room. They fulfill responsibilities for their family, yet a corner of their heart stays tired. Some look at the lives of others and wonder why they feel so out of place. Some keep running without knowing where they are running to. And some, even after touching what they once dreamed of, still carry a hollow space inside that nothing can fill. What makes people suffer is not always their circumstance. People suffer because they forget something that seems obvious. Their true origin does not lie in what they have or lose or cling to. It lies in the place they neglect the most, their inner world. Have you ever sat down slowly and listened deeply to yourself? Not to judge, not to fix, just to notice one simple truth, that you have been tired for too long. You have walked too far away from the place that once made you feel at peace. And maybe you have believed that if you just try a little harder, everything will change. But the farther you go, the more peace seems to drift away from you. We live in a time when people put almost all their trust in things outside bank accounts, job contracts, titles, degrees, ID cards, or short-lived compliments. They believe that if they hold on to those things, they will be safe. Yet inside they feel as unstable as someone standing on water, because no boat on the outside can replace the boat within. When you forget that you were born from a place of fullness, you begin to search everywhere except the one place that can give you what you need. You try to prove your worth. You try to earn recognition. You try to avoid being left behind. But every step like that takes you further away from your roots. I once met a woman in Portland. She spent her youth building a career, and yes, she succeeded. But during a conversation she cried for a long time and said she felt as if she was standing before a door that never opened. No matter what she did, life felt empty, as if something important had been lost, but she could not name it. I did not give her advice. I only said one thing. Maybe you did not lose anything. Maybe you only forgot where you placed it. And that place was inside her. You see, when people disconnect from their inner origin, the source of peace, clarity, and natural worth, they start placing their trust in fragile things. They look for certainty in what is never certain. And when those things change, they think they have failed. But the truth is, they have only walked away from their true position. No one is born lacking, but many grow up lacking belief in themselves. They are taught that life is a struggle, that to get anything they must trade, compete, or fight. Yet the deepest part of them whispers a different language. You do not need to fight. You only need to receive. The problem of this age is not a lack of opportunity. It is a lack of listening to oneself. People follow the voices of others so much that they lose the voice within. They hear too much noise and forget the quietest whisper, the call to return. Do you know why many people change jobs, change homes, change relationships, yet the emptiness inside remains untouched? Because the issue is not where they are, but how far they have moved from who they are. You cannot find peace in a life you do not truly belong to. You cannot find fullness in a place your soul cannot touch. And you cannot find safety in a world that always changes if you do not rebuild the bridge to the unchanging source within. There is a line I often remind people of. Lack is not reality. It is only forgetfulness. When you remember your origin, you begin to shift. When you remember you were born from fullness, you stop clinging to things outside to prove it. When you remember your worth comes from within, you no longer need anyone to confirm it. And when you remember you were never forgotten, life begins to open doors you could not see before. Before closing this part, I want to ask you something as a gentle and honest invitation. How many times in your life have you had everything yet still felt that something was missing deep inside? Thank you for being here and listening. The original treasure within the subconscious. There are moments in life when you pause in the middle of an ordinary day and place your hand on your chest. Not because you are tired, but because something deeper seems to call you. A feeling soft yet unmistakably real, as if someone whispers, "Stop searching, look within." You may think you are imagining it, but it is not an illusion. It is the echo of the original treasure inside you, a treasure you have carried since the day you entered this life. A treasure you do not need to create, do not need to earn, and do not need to prove yourself worthy of. It simply belongs to you. If you have ever felt that no matter how hard you try, life still feels incomplete, it is not because you lack anything. It is only because you have not opened the right door. Within you, behind the fear, behind the exhaustion, behind the years of trying to hold everything together, there is a layer of awareness that is calm and still, where everything you long for already exists in seed form. What are these seeds? They are abilities. They are intuition. They are wisdom. They are unopened opportunities. They are the beautiful pictures of the future that you have not dared to believe are meant for you. All of them live in the subconscious, a wide field with no visible end, where the thoughts and emotions you plant each day rise and grow into the shape of your life. The wonder is that you do not need to strain to build this treasure. It was placed in you from the beginning, like an invisible engraving. You were born with the blueprint of wholeness inside you. When you activate it, it opens. When you accept it, it begins to work. When you remember it, it becomes the shape of your outer experience. Your subconscious does not tire, does not run out, and does not doubt. It does not judge right or wrong, it simply obeys whatever you repeat. If you say, "I cannot," it will create the circumstances that make you unable. If you say, "I am worthy," it will open paths your rational mind could never predict. The subconscious is the most fertile soil you have, and any seed you plant in it will grow according to natural law. Look back at your life. There were times when you lightly thought of something good or bad, and later it became reality. This is not coincidence. It is the response of the subconscious to the image you gave it. It is like the deep sea, the surface may move with waves, but beneath it is always working, always steady, always following its design. I once met a man in Minnesota. He told me that throughout his life he felt as if he stood before a locked door turning the handle without having the key. He tried changing jobs, directions, and environments, yet he still felt suffocated. Only when he learned to look inward, learned to picture what he wanted without doubting, did the door begin to open. He said that one night he sat still, simply still, and for the first time in years he saw a clear image of his future. A new job, a lighter life, a sense of freedom he had not dared to admit. He did not try to create that future, he simply looked at it gently. 3 months later, it arrived exactly as he saw it. Not magic. Only the subconscious doing its work. You do not need to fully understand this mechanism. Just as you do not need to understand every detail of how a seed sprouts to trust that it will become a tree. You only need to know that what you plant you will receive. What you repeat you will live. And what you accept as true will slowly become true. Your subconscious never stops working even when you lose faith. It carries a persistence that the conscious mind has never touched. It knows the way even when you do not. It holds for you the doors you think you have lost the keys to. It never blames you for doubting it. It only waits for you to believe again. You may ask, how do I open this treasure? The answer is gentle, by no longer living as if you have nothing. When you believe you are empty, you close the vault of your inner wealth. When you believe you are not enough, you unintentionally block the flow that is already moving toward you. When you believe life gives you only crumbs, you step away from your original design. But when you pause, breathe deeply, and whisper to yourself, "Everything I need to begin is already within me," the subconscious hears it, and it begins to open. No one can do this for you. No advice is powerful enough unless you place your own hand on your mind and say that you are ready. Because this treasure is not out there. It rests in the place you once forgot to look. And now I want to ask you something, a question only you can answer. Have you ever felt that beneath all your exhaustion, there seems to be a bright part quietly waiting for you to remember it? If the answer is yes, even a little, then the treasure has already begun to awaken. The subconscious is the keeper of hidden keys. There is a truth many people reach half their life without truly understanding. Their reality is not shaped by what happens around them, but by what happens quietly within. The subconscious is like the deep soil beneath the grass. You do not see it every day, yet everything on the surface depends on it. And what you plant there becomes the shape of tomorrow. Your subconscious is not a dark, hidden place for you to fear. It is like a loyal friend working silently without rest. It absorbs everything you believe, Every image you nurture, every sentence you whisper to yourself in your most vulnerable moments. It does not argue with you, it does not question right or wrong. It simply responds to the emotion behind your words. That is why many people work hard, change environments, switch careers, or shift directions, yet their life keeps repeating the same cycle: lack, fatigue, anxiety, a sense of not being enough. The outside changes, but the inside does not. And the subconscious, like a faithful keeper of keys, continues to open the doors that match what they secretly believe. I once met a man in Austin. He told me he had tried many ways to improve his finances, yet nothing worked. He shared a long list of failures and ended by saying, "Maybe I was not born to do better." I asked him one simple question: "How many times have you told yourself that sentence?" He fell silent. What we say to ourselves becomes the language of the subconscious, and that language becomes the direction of our life. The subconscious is like an automatic door. It does not open to a passing wish. It opens to what you repeat. Some people carry a sense of lack for so many years that the subconscious no longer knows how to receive. When something good comes, they doubt it. When an opportunity appears, they hesitate. When they speak of desire, they choose timid words as if asking for crumbs from life. The subconscious hears everything, and it records everything. It works exactly according to the energy you give it. If you say, "I am not worthy," the subconscious does not correct you. It takes it as a command. If you say, "I am only temporarily lucky," it will create temporary outcomes. If you say, "Good things rarely come to me," it will close doors you do not know you are closing. But the wonder is this: with a small shift in the way you talk to yourself, the subconscious immediately changes direction. It carries no memory of your mistakes. It does not hold the past to punish you. It looks only at what you believe right now. And what you believe now becomes the key that shapes your future. Once you understand this law, you will see that you are not powerless. You are the one programming your own mind. I want you to imagine your subconscious as a wide room filled with closed drawers. In every drawer lies a capacity: abundance, peace, clarity, intuition, opportunity, doors not yet opened. None of the drawers are empty. They are simply inactive. And each drawer opens with one key: only repeated emotion. You cannot knock once and expect the door to open. But if you knock with steady belief, the door cannot remain closed. The subconscious works through consistency, not impatience. Many people tell me they have tried to believe, but nothing changed. I ask them, "How long did you believe? 1 day, 3 days, or only on the days you felt strong and forgot it on the days you felt tired?" The subconscious responds to stability. If you plant a good seed each day but uproot it the next morning to check whether it has sprouted, the garden cannot grow. You do not need to force yourself to be strong. You only need to gently hold one steady picture, the picture of the person you want to become and the life you want to live. The subconscious does not need perfection. It needs consistency. I once met a woman in Vancouver. She lived for years with the belief that she was never good enough for a better life. She tried hard to compensate, yet the more she tried, the more exhausted she became. One night she chose to repeat one sentence before sleep: "I am willing to open myself to good things." That was all. No pressure, no forcing. 3 months later, she told me life felt smoother than it had in years. Work flowed better. Relationships felt healthier. She said, "I only changed one sentence. The subconscious did the rest." This is what I want you to understand. The subconscious does not need you to fight. It needs you to agree. It does not need you to beg. It needs you to accept. It does not require you to become someone else. It only needs you to return to your true nature, someone who has the right to receive the goodness they have carried since the beginning of life. And when you say a simple sentence, I allow it, you hand the subconscious the key to open drawers that have been asleep. The truth has always lived inside. What belongs to you has never left you. It only waits for the moment you return. Gently place your hand on the door and say, I am ready. The story of Amelia in Boston. I want to tell you a small story, and sometimes it is these quiet stories that hold the deepest power. It belongs to a woman named Amelia who lived in Boston, an ordinary person like anyone else, yet her journey became a gentle proof of how the subconscious responds to what we hold inside. Amelia once had a simple life, a steady job, a small room facing old trees. But when her father passed away, everything began to shift. Not only the grief of losing him, but also bills, sudden responsibilities, and worries that did not yet have names. She heard that her father left a portion of assets, but the documents were incomplete, scattered, and people said it might never be found. During that time, Amelia often sat alone in her little room at an old wooden desk. At night, the house grew so quiet she could hear each breath she took. And in that quiet she began to hear a familiar fear, the fear of not having enough, the fear of an unclear future, the fear that life from this point would be nothing but patched together days. One evening, when exhaustion wrapped around her like a blanket, she called an older friend named Helen, a woman who had faced many storms, yet always remained calm and gentle. Helen told her, Amelia, some things do not come from physical effort. They come from the image you hold within. Try this for me. Each night before you sleep, imagine what belongs to you finding its way back to you. The words sounded strange, but soft. Amelia was not sure she understood, but that night before closing her eyes she tried. She imagined an envelope with her name on it. She did not know what was inside, only the feeling of holding it, a feeling light, warm, and safe. She pictured herself standing at her door, opening it, and sensing the weight on her shoulders lift by half. The next day, nothing happened, nor the next week. But Amelia kept doing it each night. No forcing, no desperate hope, just a simple act, like lighting a small candle inside her heart. Strangely, she noticed she felt calmer, less overwhelmed. And each time she imagined the envelope, it felt like a small stream flowed into her mind, gentle and quiet. She could not explain what was changing, but that very calmness was the first door that opened. Then, one afternoon in August, while Amelia was cleaning old boxes in her father's attic, the phone rang. It was an unknown number. A man's voice introduced himself as an attorney from the office where her father had once worked. He said that while reviewing old records, they found a note accidentally clipped inside a different file. And the note had her name on it. Miss Amelia, he said, we believe you should come in so we can reopen the inheritance file. It seems your name was left out of the main record. At that moment, Amelia stood still. The attic grew silent around her, and she heard only her heartbeat. She did not know why tears came. Maybe not because of the money, but because of the feeling of being supported, of being remembered, of having something rightfully hers return after seeming loss. A week later, she held exactly what she had imagined, an envelope with her name. Not magic, not coincidence. Simply something rightful returning to its rightful place. When she told Helen, the older woman only smiled. You see, what belongs to you will find you, but only when you open your heart to receive it first. I share this not to make you believe in mystical coincidences. I share it so you understand something simple. The subconscious does not respond to desperate pleading. It responds to the gentle images you repeat with trust. It does not need you to know how things will happen. It only needs you to accept that they can happen. Amelia did not try to control life. She changed the picture inside her mind. And that change softened doors that once seemed locked. Many things in life work this way. When you fear, the door closes. When you trust, the door opens. When you panic, everything tangles. When you soften, everything begins to align. What belongs to you is not lost. It simply sleeps in the deepest part of your subconscious. And when you call it with peace, it awakens. Now, at this point, I want to invite you, whether you are reading, listening, or simply sitting quietly, if there is something you wish would return to your life, an opportunity, a sense of confidence, something good you once lost, leave a comment saying, "I am ready to change," or simply type the number 1. Not for me to see, but for you to see that you have just opened a door. The pattern of the spiritual beggar there is a quiet kind of pain many people carry throughout their lives, not because they lack talent or lack opportunity, but because they live like a spiritual beggar in the middle of their own life. They never say it out loud yet. That feeling shows up in every choice they make, every thought they repeat, every moment they shrink back from what is good for them. I call them spiritual beggars not to criticize, but to describe a pattern countless people inherit from childhood. These are the ones who always feel they must ask for a small place in life. Ask to be loved. Ask to be recognized. Ask to feel safe. Ask to receive a small portion of the good that already belongs to them. They ask not because they truly lack, but because they were taught to believe they lack. In many families, children grow up not with the message "you are worthy," but with phrases repeated for years. Do not ask for too much. Money is hard to earn. People like us should live modestly. Do not bother anyone. Do not expect much. These words may seem harmless, but they cling to the subconscious like dust. Over time, they thicken into a fog that keeps people from seeing their true worth. And when they grow up, they enter life with the posture of someone who must ask permission to exist. A spiritual beggar is not someone poor. They may have a stable job, a warm family, even many people who care about them. But deep inside, they only allow themselves to receive small things. They shrink when someone praises them. They decline opportunities because they think they are not good enough. They fear being a burden, fear failing, fear being seen. They say it is fine, I can handle it, even when they are breaking inside, and their subconscious records it as a command. If you believe you are worthy of little, I will bring you little. If you believe you must beg for each piece, I will close the doors so you do not receive too much. They do everything from a place lower than who they truly are. They live like someone standing outside the house of their own life, peeking through the window, hoping someone will open the door for them. What they do not know is that the key has always been in their hand. They only forgot how to use it. I have spoken with many people who do not understand why they always experience just enough but rarely break through. They work hard, sometimes harder than others, yet they stay within a safe boundary, a boundary they unconsciously built for themselves. One person told me he always felt like he was borrowing space in this life, as if every good thing that came to him was temporary and would eventually be taken away. Another shared that she never dared to dream big because dreaming big felt like asking for too much. You see, no one teaches them to live small. Their invisible childhood wounds did. The pattern of the spiritual beggar begins to form when a child receives this message. You must do something to be loved. You must behave to be allowed to stay. You must sacrifice to be valued. And when they grow up, they live exactly according to those beliefs. They must give a lot to feel allowed to receive a little. They must perform perfectly to feel allowed to stand tall. They must exhaust themselves before they feel allowed to rest. And when life offers them something unexpected, they do not receive it as a rightful gift, but as a temporary blessing that might disappear any time. A spiritual beggar often has three traits. One, they fear being a burden. They shrink their needs to make others comfortable, even if it hurts them. Two, they believe that love and abundance must be earned through sacrifice. They receive with trembling hands and give until they are empty. Three, they think good things coming to them are favors, not natural rights. They are surprised when they are loved, but easily believe when they are abandoned. I want you to understand something. No one is born a spiritual beggar. We become that way because we were taught that way. And what has been learned can be unlearned. What has been believed can be changed. What has been distorted in the subconscious can be healed. You do not need to blame yourself for living small. You only need to see that each old belief is a door that has long been closed, and you can choose to open it again. Not with force or resistance, but with a new gentleness toward yourself. Because when you change your relationship with your own worth, the subconscious changes the relationship life has with you. When you begin to receive with calmness, life begins to give with generosity. When you stop shrinking, the doors that once seemed sealed begin to open without you needing to knock hard. The spiritual beggar is only a role, and it is time for you to step out of that role and return to your true nature. Someone who has enough, someone who is worthy, someone who carries a spiritual inheritance woven into their being from the very beginning. The man in Seattle and the turning of the self. Daniel had lived in Seattle almost his entire life. He was not a man who lacked effort. For 20 years he worked in the same mechanical factory, never late, never refusing a difficult shift. Everyone saw him as the reliable one, the one who carried the heavy parts, the one people turned to when they needed help. But behind that reliability was a quiet fatigue no one could see. Daniel often said he felt as if he was standing on an old bridge. Every step trembled. He did not fear work, but he feared that his life would remain exactly the same. His family loved him, yet no one understood why a man so serious about his work always returned to the same state just enough to survive. Though his salary increased each year, he never accumulated anything. Whatever came to him slipped away like water through his fingers. One day after work, Daniel said to me, "I have done everything I can yet. Why is it still not enough? I do not understand what I am doing wrong." There was no bitterness in his voice. It was the quiet surrender of someone exhausted from trying. I looked at him and saw the same look I had seen in many others. They do not lack effort, they lack an awareness of their natural worth. I asked him, "Daniel, when you work so hard, what feeling do you work from? From the belief that you deserve a better life, or from the fear that you will have nothing if you do not try?" He stayed silent for a long time. Then he exhaled. "I think it is fear. All my life, I have worked only to avoid lack. That was the core of everything. Those who live to avoid lack can never step into fullness. Those who work to avoid being left behind always feel they are running. Those who strive out of fear of losing will succeed in a way that never reaches their soul." I told Daniel he had lived many years from the mindset of someone holding a temporary seat rather than someone inheriting a rightful place. He worked as if life offered him only leftovers, and he needed to gather them quickly before someone else took them. His subconscious recorded that belief and arranged circumstances accordingly. I gave him no complicated method. I asked him to try only one thing. Each night before sleep, place your hand on your chest and say slowly, "I am a child of the Creator. I open my heart to receive what belongs to me." Do not try to believe too quickly. Let the words fall into your subconscious like a drop of water soaking into soil. Daniel was not convinced, but he had nothing to lose. And sometimes when a person reaches the limit of exhaustion, they become more open to what they once ignored. In the first weeks, Daniel felt strange, as if he was saying something that did not belong to him. But he continued. No forcing, no chasing results, only repeating the sentence like a breath. Then, something small began to shift. He felt less tense. He no longer carried the weight of having to fight life every morning. When someone asked for help, he helped with calmness rather than from the need to prove himself. He became gentler without even noticing. One late autumn afternoon, the factory began restructuring departments. Many worried about layoffs. But to Daniel's surprise, he was offered a new role, a lighter administrative position with higher pay, and most importantly, without the exhausting shift patterns. When he told me about it, he was not excited. He only smiled and said, "I do not understand why, but I feel like I have stepped into a new phase. Everything happened so gently without me having to grab or chase anything." I looked at him and said it was not life that changed first. You changed first and life followed. That is the truth many people forget. The subconscious does not respond to the effort of the hands. It responds to the belief of the heart. It does not follow fear. It follows openness. It does not need you to know what will come. It only needs you to know you are worthy of receiving. Daniel did not become someone new. He simply put down the old fear, the fear that made him live as if he stood at the edge of his own life. And when he released that fear, he stepped into the place that had belonged to him all along, the place of an inheritor. Daniel's story is not a story of success in the usual sense. It is a story of turning the self from someone who always felt lacking to someone who felt supported. The shift was not loud. It happened inside quietly yet steadily. The most important thing is that Daniel realized he did not have to become worthy. He only had to remember that he already was. And when he remembered, life opened its doors as if it had been waiting for him for a very long time. The role of the true child and the release of guilt there is something many people never recognize. They are not afraid of lack. They are afraid of receiving too much, afraid of receiving something better than what they are used to, afraid of receiving what deep down they believe they do not deserve. And that fear does not come from logic. It comes from a very deep layer of the subconscious, a layer made of memories, teachings, beliefs, and wounds rooted in childhood. I have met many people who are talented, hardworking, kind, yet whenever life reaches out to give them something good, an opportunity, a sum of money, a healthy relationship, they shrink back. They hesitate, doubt, or even refuse, not because they do not want it, but because they fear receiving it. And buried inside that fear is an unspoken question. What right do I have to have this? That question is the shared wound of those who have forgotten their true role. You are not a worker in your own life. You are not someone standing outside waiting to be invited in. You are the child, the one who belongs, the one who has the right to receive, the one who inherits. Think of a child in a family. The child does not need permission to inherit. It does not need to prove worthiness to be loved. It receives because it belongs. Its inheritance is not based on performance or merit or cost. It receives because it is natural. You were once like that too. You were once that child, full, clear, not afraid of taking someone's share, not afraid of being judged for receiving, not afraid of being misunderstood for being happy. You simply forgot. Then, as you grew up, you were taught many things: that humility means declining, that receiving too much is selfish, that living comfortably is wrong, that money is dangerous, that good people should endure lack. These teachings passed through generations without malice, but filled with limitation. They form a fog around the mind, making it hard to see one simple truth. You have the right to receive good things, not because you are perfect, but because you are part of life. I once met a woman named Sarah in San Diego. She was hardworking, gentle, and caring, always ready to help anyone. But when she received a large payment from a successful project, she cried not from joy, but from guilt. She felt she had done something wrong. She admitted, "I am not used to having more than others. I feel like I took someone else's share." I looked at her and said, "You have taken nothing from anyone. You only received what had been placed aside for you. The supply of life is not limited. It does not give to one by taking from another." She fell silent. Her tears stopped, not because I convinced her, but because the words touched something she once knew but had forgotten. We all forget. We forget that life does not operate by dividing portions. We forget that your abundance does not reduce anyone else's. We forget that receiving is not taking. We forget that your success harms no one. We forget that you are not the last person in a long line waiting for permission to step forward. And most of all, we forget we are children, those who belong and those who have a natural right to a full life. When you see yourself as an outsider, you receive like an outsider with caution, hesitation, and doubt. When you remember you are a child, you receive with calmness, without grasping, without guilt, without fear. You cannot open your heart to life if you still carry guilt for receiving. That guilt dissolves only when you realize something. Receiving is not an act of selfishness. Receiving is an act of alignment with the flow of life, a flow that always gives, always nourishes, always expands. Life does not want you to live poor, cramped, or lacking. Life did not place you here to struggle endlessly. Life gave you seeds so you could bloom, not so you would hide them in fear of others being uncomfortable. When you bloom, others also see what is possible. When you live fully, others feel inspired. When you receive good things, you become a living reminder that good things exist. There is a quiet law the subconscious understands well. What you accept about yourself sets the level of abundance you allow into your life. If you believe you deserve only a little, the subconscious will bring you little. If you believe you have the right to receive, the subconscious will open ways for things that match that belief. If you believe receiving harms others, you will spend a lifetime rejecting yourself. But if you believe life is full for everyone, you step into the very flow you belong to from the beginning. No child asks permission to be loved. No rightful heir must prove their worth to inherit. And you listening to these words now do not need to struggle to be worthy. You only need to return to your true role. When you remember you are the child, not the beggar, the door of abundance begins to open. Not with noise, but with small shifts. Your heart feels lighter. Your defenses soften, opportunities come. And you not turn away, good things find you naturally. This is not magic. It is simply life functioning exactly as it was meant to. The syndrome of "I am the last one." There are beliefs that are never spoken yet. They quietly shape an entire life. One of them is the feeling of always standing last in the line of life. No one teaches us this. No one intentionally plants that thought in us. Yet somehow, through disappointments, childhood comparisons, and delayed steps in our growing years, we slowly form a deep conclusion. Maybe the good things are not meant for me. That feeling is not loud. It simmers quietly. It is like the sound of rain behind a window. You do not see it, but you know it is there. And the older you become, the thicker it feels, settling like dust over your awareness. You may smile, work hard, fulfill responsibilities, yet deep inside a whisper lingers, "I am probably the last one." People with this syndrome do not lack talent. They do not lack kindness. They do not lack opportunity. What they lack is the acknowledgement that they are allowed to receive good things just as much as anyone else. They see others reaching their goals and they feel genuinely happy for them, but always with a soft shadow inside. I do not know when it will be my turn. Someone once told me that every time their friends were promoted, they felt both joy and a quiet sting of being left behind. Not because they were jealous, but because they feared they would always be the one after everyone else. Another person shared that when they saw others being loved, chosen, or trusted, they immediately shrank back as if life were handing out gifts and they were standing outside the door. This is the sign of a deep forgetfulness, forgetting that in the spiritual realm there is no waiting line, no order, no one in front, and no one behind. Life does not distribute in that way. The door of abundance does not open by sequence. It opens by the degree of your openness. When you believe you are the last one, the subconscious records it as an instruction. It makes you see life through a backward lens where opportunities come, but you do not see them, where others receive, but you do not reach out. And you think life is forgetting you, but in truth you are stepping one step behind the place life already prepared for you. The syndrome of I am the last one usually begins with small experiences. A moment you were compared to a sibling, a moment you tried your best but were not acknowledged, a moment you loved someone but they chose another, a moment you hoped and hope collapsed, a moment you arrived late and received the lesser share. A child's mind cannot analyze these moments. It draws one conclusion: maybe I am always the one who comes after. That conclusion grows with you, becoming an emotional habit, then a way of living. But the truth is this: in the spiritual realm, no one stands behind anyone. You cannot be left behind in a flow that has no beginning and no end. No one can take your portion. No one can move ahead of the place that was yours from the start. When you see someone receiving something good, remember that it does not reduce what is available to you. On the contrary, it may be a sign that the wider door is opening. Just as standing in sunlight, another person beside you does not dim your light. Light is not divided. It shines according to openness. I once met a man in Phoenix. He worked in administration for years, always steady but never breaking through. He admitted that since childhood he had carried the feeling that only others were chosen. He did not think that feeling affected him until he realized that every time a new opportunity appeared, he quietly stepped aside. Not because he lacked ability, but because he believed someone else would be more fitting. I told him, it is not that life forgot you. You forgot to place yourself in your own line. From that day, he practiced something simple. Whenever he heard someone succeeded, he no longer whispered, "Not me." Instead, he said softly, "If it can come to them, it can come to me too." That small sentence was like a gentle adjustment in his inner compass, and it opened a new path he had not noticed before. A few months later, he was invited into a position he once thought he had no chance of receiving. Not because he had changed completely, but because his place in his mind had changed. When you release the idea that you are the last one, you step out of the invisible loop that has held you for years. You step out of the shadow of old comparisons. You see life not through the lens of lack, but through the lens of a spiritual heir. Someone who trusts that good things are also making their way toward them. No one stands last in the house of life. No one is abandoned in the flow of the source. No one must wait outside the door to be called. You are not late. You are not behind. You are simply opening your door at your appointed time. And now I want to ask you something, a question to help you look within. How many times in your life have you felt others were chosen first, while you stood behind, and deep down that feeling made you believe you were less deserving than they were? Thank you for being present in this part. 3 small stories about an inheritance reawakened in my life. I have witnessed many things that taught me this. No gift of life is ever truly lost. Some things simply slip out of sight for a while, then find their way back the moment our mind opens enough to receive them. These 3 stories are not mystical miracles. They are gentle reminders that what belongs to you will touch you when you stop pushing it away with fear, with doubt, or with the belief that you are unworthy. The first story, The Man in Houston and the Missing Documents. I met Lawrence during a small gathering in Houston. He told me his father had left behind documents proving land ownership, but the files had been missing for years, and he had long given up hope. The authorities said no records remained. His family considered the matter closed. But Lawrence was different. He did not resent anything. He simply carried a quiet sadness. Then one day he heard about the power of inner images in the subconscious. Not begging, not forcing, just opening the heart to what is seeking you. Each night, Lawrence imagined himself holding a file with a red stamp, feeling the paper so clearly he could almost hear the sound of flipping pages. He was not trying to command life. He simply allowed his heart to trust that what was his could not disappear. 3 weeks later, a distant relative called. While cleaning an old attic, they found a box of papers Lawrence's father had left with him for safekeeping. Inside was a full notarized copy of the documents everyone thought were gone forever. Lawrence told the story in a voice soft as wind. I do not think I called it back. I think I just stopped pushing it away. Some doors open only when we stop knocking with the heavy sound of disappointment and start breathing gently with trust. The second story, The Woman in Toronto and the Forgotten Insurance. I met Marissa at a workshop in Toronto. She was the kind of person who lived with order and care, someone who believed she must handle everything alone. But often those who appear the strongest carry the deepest fear, the fear that no one is truly on their side. After her mother passed, Marissa handled all the paperwork herself. She believed everything was complete. But a close friend reminded her that her mother once had a small insurance plan from a former employer. When Marissa inquired, they told her the account might not even exist anymore. At that moment, she was exhausted enough to want to give up. But during her reading about the energy of acceptance, she began practicing something simple. Each morning she closed her eyes and whispered, if it belongs to me, it will find me. She did not control anything. She did not force anything. She simply let go a little. 2 months later, the insurance company reached out. While reviewing old data, they found an account in her mother's name. It was a small amount, but enough to cover the remaining funeral costs and allow Marissa to begin a training program she had postponed for years. When she told me the story, she said one sentence I never forgot. I always thought I had to hold everything together, but it turns out some things were holding me. Sometimes what you seek is not out there. It is right beside you, waiting for you to worry less, fear less, and stop believing you must carry the whole world yourself. The third story, The Student in Ohio and the Scholarship with the Wrong Name. Thomas was a young student in Ohio who always believed opportunities belonged to other people. He studied well but never dared to believe he deserved more than he had. When he applied for a scholarship, he was rejected. He assumed that was final. Only later did he learn the processing clerk had mistyped his name. But the heart of the story was not the administrative mistake. It was what Thomas did after the rejection. A teacher advised him, try imagining yourself receiving the acceptance letter, even if it has not happened. Not to beg for it, but to reopen the door you closed. Thomas tried. Each night he pictured himself opening the letter, seeing his name, feeling the lightness in his chest, as if he had removed a stone. He did not know where it would lead. He only knew it brought him peace. Weeks later, the school contacted him. During an audit, they found the name error and confirmed Thomas was actually eligible for the scholarship. They awarded him enough to cover the entire semester. When he spoke to his teacher, he said, "I do not think you taught me how to attract a scholarship. I think you taught me how to stop excluding myself. A door opens only when we stop turning our back on it." All three stories share one truth. None of them created the good they received. They simply opened their hearts so the good that was already theirs could reach them. Life does not calculate. The subconscious does not judge. The universe is not stingy. Only human fear convinces us that good things stay far away. But when that fear softens, life finds its way. You do not need to know how. You only need to stop locking the door from the inside. The invisible inheritance and the declaration that changes a life. Some treasures are written on paper, and some are written in the soul. A legal will can be lost, damaged, or altered, but the invisible will, the spiritual inheritance given to you the moment you arrived in this life, cannot be taken, cannot be erased, cannot be rewritten by anyone. The only thing that makes it seem inactive is when you forget it exists. I have met many people who feel as if life has not given them their portion, not given them opportunity, not given them support or luck. But what they do not realize is that deep in the subconscious, which shapes reality like a quiet machine, an invisible will is still waiting for them. A will they have never signed. They do not know how to sign it. They do not know how to activate it. They think they must work harder, push harder, struggle more. But spiritual inheritance does not open by force. It opens by awareness. The invisible will is not some mystical document. It is the sum of potentials, opportunities, ideas, intuition, and creativity already inside you, but still dormant because of the limiting beliefs you have carried for years. People often say natural talent is the greatest gift a person has. I believe something else. The greatest gift is not talent. It is awareness of that talent. A person can stand on treasure yet live poor if he believes he has nothing. A person can face an open door yet refuse to enter if he believes it is locked. A person can carry a spiritual inheritance yet never receive it if he does not activate it. The invisible follows a simple law. What you acknowledge in your mind begins to find its way into your life. What you deny in your mind has no path to reach you. Not because life favors some and not others, but because the subconscious can only bring to reality what you accept as true. It cannot deliver what you block with fear, with doubt, with the thought, "I do not deserve this." I once spoke with a man named Edward. He had talent, he had opportunities, yet all his life he believed he was not born for great success. That belief was not true, but the subconscious, honest like a mirror, reflected that belief into every chapter of his life. He did not lack opportunity. He lacked acceptance. He did not believe the invisible will belonged to him. Then one day he began practicing something small. Each morning he placed his hand on his chest and said slowly, "I receive the spiritual inheritance that is already mine." He did not know what would come. He did not rush anything. He simply signed the invisible will with his presence. A few months later, the world had not changed, but he had. His doubt softened. His heart felt lighter. His eyes saw possibilities where before he only saw limits. His conversations grew gentler. He began to reopen doors he had once locked himself. And slowly good things appeared quietly, naturally. He smiled and said, "I think the will was always here. I only just signed it." This is what many forget. You do not beg for the invisible will. You activate it with a declaration. Not a loud declaration, but one that rises from the deepest awareness. I have. I am given. I accept. The subconscious does not respond to pleading. It responds to confirmation, a sentence soft enough to enter yet true enough to unlock. You cannot activate the invisible will if you still say to yourself, "I am not worthy. This is too good for me. I do not want to take too much. I should settle for less." These sentences are signatures of refusal. People refuse not because they want to. They refuse because they fear being judged, fear being criticized, fear failing, fear receiving more than those around them. But fear is not the voice of spirit. Fear is the echo of old wounds. The invisible will does not care about your past. It cares about the belief you hold right now. If you believe you are small, it closes. If you believe you are worthy, it opens. If you believe you are an outsider, you will stand outside. If you believe you are a child, you will step in. Many ask me, how do I sign this will? How do I activate it? I always say one thing, through your steady declaration. Not through begging, but through affirmation. Not through long speeches, but through clarity. Not through chasing results, but through standing firm in awareness. One strong declaration can begin to shift your entire life. Each morning before the world touches you, say slowly, "I activate the invisible inheritance that belongs to me." Each night before you sleep, say, "I receive what is mine in peace." These sentences do not change the world instantly. They change the person entering the world, and once you change, the world follows. Sleep is the golden doorway. There are mornings when you wake, and somehow the world feels a little lighter. Nothing special has happened. No unexpected good news. Yet there is a soft clarity, as if your mind has been rearranged gently during the night. In those moments, you are touching a quiet truth many people overlook. Sleep is not the pause of consciousness. It is the wide open doorway through which the subconscious begins its work. During the day, your mind is like a room full of noise. You think, analyze, worry, compare, judge, react. In that state, the subconscious cannot speak. It stands behind you, patient, like a skilled craftsman, waiting for you to step aside so it can complete the work you assigned it through your words, images, and emotions. But when you sleep, that doorway opens. The noise of the conscious mind fades. All the arguing and doubting goes silent. The subconscious steps forward, receiving the final command you offered before falling asleep, and quietly weaves the threads of your life. Many people do not know that the last sentence you say to yourself before sleeping is the key that opens the deepest influence of the subconscious. If you fall asleep in worry, worry takes root. If you fall asleep in fear, fear shapes the next day. But if you sleep with a hopeful image, a gentle trust and open feeling, the subconscious begins rebuilding your entire approach to life around that image. The subconscious does not choose. It receives. It does not judge. It follows. And in sleep it works more powerfully than at any other time. I remember a young man in Denver named Michael. After months of unemployment, he felt forgotten by life. He applied everywhere and heard nothing. Every night he fell asleep, fearing the next day would prove he was useless. I told him, "Do not try to change your days first. Change your nights." I taught him something simple. Each night before put a sore hand on your chest, breathe slowly and whisper in my sleep, "I am guided to what belongs to me." Michael did not fully believe, but he tried. Not to force results, not to chase outcomes. He repeated it like a lullaby for the mind. It became a small stream, guiding him into deeper rest. 5 days later, he dreamt of walking down an unfamiliar street. He saw a building, a hallway, and an office with a sign he had never seen in real life. The next morning he woke with a strange clarity, light and steady, as if someone had placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "Walk this way." He wrote down the dream and that afternoon walked through the downtown area. Soon, he stopped in front of a familiar yet overlooked street, and there it was, the building from the dream. No hiring signs, nothing unusual. But he walked in. The receptionist asked what he needed. Michael simply said, "I felt I needed to come here today." It sounded strange, but she smiled and replied, "You came at the right time. Our HR department just opened a position they have not announced yet." 3 weeks later, Michael had a job. The dream did not create the job. It simply opened a doorway in his mind, a doorway he had not dared to step through before. Sleep is where you plant your most important instructions. Once you understand this, you will never go to bed with a chaotic mind again. You will not let your last words be self-blaming thoughts. Why did I not do better? Why is everything so hard? I am afraid of tomorrow. Instead, you will choose gentle sentences not to escape reality, but to open a new one. I am guided. I am safe. Good things are coming to me. I sleep in peace and wake to a new doorway. These are not magic phrases. They are streams carrying signals into your deepest layers. The subconscious does not understand the language of fear. It understands the language of images. And sleep is when images come alive. Do you know why children sleep more easily than adults? Because their minds do not resist the images they see. They trust. Adults forget how to trust. But the beautiful truth is this: it is never too late to trust again. Each night, give the subconscious one gentle sentence, one clear picture, one peaceful feeling, and it will do the rest. Remember this as a soft reminder. Tomorrow does not begin in the morning. Tomorrow begins with what you plant into your sleep tonight. You cannot control everything that happens in life, but you can choose your last sentence before your eyes close. And sometimes one sentence at the right moment can change an entire lifetime. The invisible bank that never runs dry there is something most people forget as they grow older. The true source of supply in life does not lie in the numbers in a bank account, nor in a job, nor in the rise and fall of the market. These things are only pathways, not routes. And when you mistake the pathway for the source, you live with worry, fear, and the feeling that something is always missing. But beneath all appearances, there is a quiet current always flowing. I call it the invisible bank, not to add mystery, but because it is the simplest way to describe the reservoir life keeps for you, a reservoir that never runs out, never closes, and never turns anyone away. This reservoir is your subconscious working in harmony with the larger life force that has held you since the day you arrived. You did not come into this world empty-handed. You came with an invisible reserve your subconscious can open the moment you allow yourself to receive. The problem is that most people do not allow it, not through words, through fear, through old habits of shrinking, through the belief that life is limited. The subconscious does not close because it has nothing to give. It closes because you do not open the door to receive. The real source is not outside you. You may change jobs, cities, or environments, but unless you change your belief about the source, you will still feel unsettled. No place can calm you until you know the true supply is not in where you go, but in what you trust. I once met a woman named Rebecca in Seattle. She planned everything carefully, saved every dollar, and lived in constant fear that one day she would run out. Whenever she received money, she immediately held it tight, afraid to spend, afraid to share, afraid to release even a little. And slowly, even as her income grew, the feeling of lack followed her everywhere like a shadow. One day I asked her a simple question. If you believe supply is limited, then how much would ever feel enough? She had no answer, and in that moment I saw what many adults carry. Not a shortage of money, a shortage of inner safety. I taught her a small practice. Whenever she felt fear, she placed her hand on her chest and whispered slowly, "Life flows through me. I do not cling and I do not lose. I simply allow the flow to continue." At first she felt nothing, but after a few weeks she began to change. She loosened her grip. She feared spending less. She stopped blaming herself for needing support, and gradually opportunities she had never noticed began appearing. Not miracles, just openings she had once missed because fear kept her eyes closed. This is what happens when an inner door is opened again. The invisible bank works through flow, not hoarding. Money is like breath. You cannot inhale once and hold it forever. Breath gives life only when it moves in and out in rhythm. Money, energy, opportunity follow the same law. You keep enough to be steady, but when you lock every door out of fear of losing, you also lock the door of receiving. The invisible bank does not ask you to be reckless or wasteful. It asks you to understand one thing. Flow creates movement, and movement creates continuity. I remember a man named Joseph in Boston. He ran a small business that rose and fell often. What exhausted him most was fear of losing. He treated every dollar as if losing it meant losing life itself. And the more he held on, the poorer he felt. One day he heard a sentence that stunned him. Life responds to your state, not your numbers. If you spend in fear, the subconscious records lack. If you spend in calm, the subconscious records fullness. From that day, he practiced something simple. Before every payment, he whispered, "I spend from fullness, not fear." In time, the change was not in his income, but in his perception. New collaborations came. Old customers returned. Friends offered opportunities he once believed were out of reach. Sometimes what you need is not new resources, but a new belief about resources. The invisible bank opens when you declare your right to receive. Every person has an invisible account, not measured in money, but in capacity to receive. And that account responds only to one thing: your deepest belief about the safety of life. If you believe life is scarce, the account tightens. If you believe life is abundant, it widens. If you believe you are undeserving, it becomes still. If you believe you are a child of life, it begins to flow. I teach many students a simple sentence with deep effect. My invisible account is always open. I receive what I need at the right time. No charm, no pleading, only awareness. When you place your trust in the right source, life changes shape. Banks can close, markets can shift, jobs can end, but the invisible bank never runs dry. Not because it is magical, but because it is the living stream that supports every breath, every thought, every honest desire within you. What belongs to you cannot be lost. What you are ready to receive will find its way. What you believe is real will take form in your life. Let the invisible bank work not through hurry, but through trust. Not through calculation, but through openness. Not through fear, but through the quiet knowing that life is carrying you even on the days you feel alone. The inventory of your invisible assets, there are things you already possess that you do not even know you have. Not material objects, not anything you can hold in your hand, but quiet inner resources, abilities, ideas, intuition, connections, and opportunities waiting to be activated. They are like drawers long locked inside the house of your inner world. You do not open them, so you assume they are empty. but they were never empty. I call this the inventory of invisible assets, not to make you dream about what is not real, but to help you remember what has belonged to you long before you knew how to use it. Many people reach midlife still believing they are poor in resources, limited in ability, unlucky in opportunity. But the truth is that no one is poor. Only those who forget what they have feel that way. And this forgetting begins early, often in childhood, when you compare yourself to others and decide you are less. But life did not bring you here to live under the weight of inadequacy. It brought you here with your full potential intact. If you do not see it, that does not mean it is missing. It means you have not looked closely enough. The first item in your inventory is the set of abilities you once called ordinary. Many people say they have no special talent, but when I listen to their stories, I see countless abilities they have never named: the patience they treat as normal, the calm others rely on, the creativity they showed when young but buried under responsibility. When you listen to yourself gently, you will notice this. You have solved things you thought were beyond you. You have stood firm while others fell. You have created goodness you forgot came from your own hands. The subconscious records all these as assets that cannot be lost. It waits for you to activate them, like opening a bank account that has always had funds you never withdrew. The second item is your unbloomed ideas. Ideas are one of the richest invisible assets a person carries. But most ideas never bloom. Not because they are weak, but because you never believed you had the right to follow them. I once met a man in Portland who dreamed of opening a small bakery. He said, "I just think about it. I do not consider it a talent." But when he spoke about baking, his eyes lit up like a child returning to something precious. That joy was the invisible asset. The subconscious responds strongly to joy. When you follow what lights you up, the door of opportunity opens. But when you deny your joy out of fear, the door closes again. The third item is the network of connections you have forgotten. There are people you once met, conversations that felt small, kind gestures you never expected. They were not accidents. Every connection carries meaning. In your invisible inventory, there are people who are bridges you have not recognized. A woman in San Jose once believed she was completely alone. But when she listed the people who had supported her, from teachers to colleagues to neighbors, she cried, not from sadness, but from seeing how supported she had been all along. This part of the inventory reminds you that life has always been sending help, and sometimes you only need to notice. The fourth item is the opportunities waiting for your mind to open. Opportunity is not always obvious. It sometimes appears through failure, through an unexpected detour, through a conversation, or a day when you feel lost. But opportunity only reveals itself to someone whose mind is open enough to receive it. I once met a man named Peter who lost his job after 10 years. He thought his career was over. But a few months later, he opened a small repair shop, something he never believed he was capable of. He said the opportunity did not come after the failure. It came through the failure. Opportunity is always part of the invisible inventory. You simply see it when you are calm enough to look. The fifth item is the lessons life has already given you. Many people treat their mistakes as failures. I treat them as assets. Everything you have survived becomes a form of inner capital no one can take from you. When you look at your life with softness, you see that every event, every loss, every sorrow has shaped you into someone stronger and deeper. The subconscious does not forget these lessons. It stores them as reserves you can draw from when facing something new. And what happens when you review your invisible assets? You do not become wealthy overnight, but your perception shifts from lack to sufficiency, from fear to openness, from worry to steadiness. And that shift, quiet and gentle, is the strongest signal you can send to your subconscious. When you realize you have, life begins to give more. When you know you are not empty, life begins to fill the spaces you once neglected. When you remember you did not arrive empty-handed, life begins to open doors you believed were not meant for you. The inventory of invisible assets is not an intellectual exercise. It is a reminder to yourself, I have more than I thought, and I can become more than I knew. And now, as a gentle invitation to your inner world, among all that you have lived, all the abilities, insights, and opportunities that once appeared, then disappeared, what have you forgotten that is still here waiting for you to call it by name? Gratitude opens the sealed chests. There is a kind of power people often underestimate, not because it is weak, but because it is so simple. Gratitude. Not the polite gratitude you were taught as a child, not the gratitude that appears only when something obvious goes well. I mean gratitude as a vibration, a soft frequency that can open spiritual doors no amount of worry or force can ever reach. You have known this feeling before. A long exhale, a quiet moment, the morning light slipping through a window, the smell of coffee, a kind gesture. Something small touches you and your heart softens. That brief shift is the pure state of gratitude. It requires no reason. It is simply the recognition that life is still holding you. And strangely, that simple state has the deepest effect on the subconscious. The subconscious does not respond to logic. It responds to emotion. And among all emotions, gratitude is the clearest signal that says, I have received. When you are grateful, you are telling life, I already have. When you are afraid, you are saying, I am lacking. And the subconscious, faithful like a mirror, reflects whatever you hold as truth. Gratitude before receiving is something the rational mind cannot understand. The rational mind wants to see first, then believe. But the subconscious works the opposite way. You believe first, then it reveals. Being grateful for what you have not yet seen is not fantasy. It is aligning your inner state with the thing you wish to receive. Like a door that opens only when you stand in the right place, gratitude positions you where abundance can reach you. I once met a woman named Helena in Chicago. She worked hard for years, always feeling behind and always afraid she would never have enough. When I asked whether she had ever tried being grateful for what she had not seen yet, she laughed. I am still worrying about paying bills. What should I be grateful for? But she tried anyway, not because she believed, but because she had nothing to lose. Each morning before leaving home, she stood still for 1 minute and whispered, thank you for the things coming toward me that I cannot see yet. At first she felt nothing, but a few weeks later she noticed she felt less defensive, less tense, less swallowed by the idea of shortage. That shift helped her notice small opportunities she had been blind to before. She told me, I did not suddenly become rich. I only began receiving what I used to push away. Gratitude does not create miracles. It clears the fog so you can see what was already there. Gratitude places you in the right position to receive what belongs to you. A panicked person cannot see opportunity. A fearful person cannot see direction. A closed mind cannot accept help. But a grateful person, even for something tiny, opens a crack of light through which the subconscious can work. Imagine life as a river. Gratitude is opening your hands. When your hands are open, you can receive. When your hands are clenched, nothing can enter, no matter how strong the current is. I once walked with a man in Phoenix during the lowest point of his life. After a business failure, he said he had lost everything. But when we listed the small things, he still had a good friend, a body still capable, a bit of time to pause. He cried, not because those things were grand, but because it was the first time in months he felt he was not completely abandoned. He began writing a short gratitude list every night, not big things, just little ones he had ignored. 3 months later, he found a new job. Not magic. Gratitude simply reopened a door in his mind, the door that said, "I can begin again." Gratitude is not just a beautiful feeling. It is a discipline of the spirit. When you practice it regularly, even when you feel little, your subconscious still receives the message, "This person is living in a state of having." And everything you attract reflects that state. Gratitude turns the subconscious into fertile soil. Without gratitude, seeds of belief struggle to grow. Without gratitude, good images cannot take root. Without gratitude, positive declarations float without landing. Gratitude is the soil. Imagine trying to plant seeds in hard stone. You could plant 1,000 and nothing would grow. But in soft, moist soil, one seed is enough. Gratitude softens the inner ground that way. Gratitude does not ask you to be strong. It asks you to be honest. Many think gratitude denies difficulty. It does not. Gratitude in difficulty does not mean saying, "I am fine." It means admitting, even when things are not fine, I still have something to stand on. You do not need to smile to be grateful. You do not need to be perfect to be grateful. You only need to pause long enough to say, a part of life is still supporting me quietly but truly. And that moment is the turning point. Gratitude is the key that opens sealed chests. Every person has a chest of invisible inheritance. No two chests are the same, but everyone has one. Inside it are abilities, unused opportunities, unopened relationships, unconnected solutions, unseen doors you have not yet stepped through. And gratitude, practiced gently and consistently, is the key that unlocks it. Not because gratitude changes life overnight, but because it changes you, so you see life through the eyes of someone who receives rather than someone who fears losing. A grateful person does not live in lack. They live in flow. And that flow always brings what they need at the right time. My closing words to you from Joseph Murphy as I write these final lines. I feel a very quiet stillness within me. Not an empty stillness, but a full one, as if something is still waiting to be placed gently into your hands, you who have walked with me until now. And I want you to know this, not as theory, not as a lesson, but as a truth I have witnessed throughout my life. You have never lacked anything you need to become who you truly are. I spent my life observing the human mind. I saw people who had everything yet lived in fear, and people with almost nothing who lived with an unexplainable peace. I saw doors opening not for the strongest, but for those who trusted the light within themselves. And I came to see that the limits we think we carry are only layers of mist on the mirror of consciousness. When you wipe that mist away, your true nature appears. A nature that has never been small, never been poor, never been forgotten. Everything written before this, every story, every image, every reminder was never meant to turn you into someone else. It was only meant to help you remember what life once made you forget. You are the heir of an infinite source. You do not need to compete. You do not need to prove anything. You only need to open your heart to receive what has been yours since the beginning. Years ago, when I was young and tangled in my own doubts, I heard a sentence rise within me one night. You do not need to go looking for the light. You only need to let the darkness in you dissolve. From that moment I understood. What we call prosperity, peace, or freedom does not arrive from the outside. It arrives the moment we stop clinging to old fears. When we stop believing we must shrink ourselves to fit someone else's expectations. When we stop thinking, we stand outside the door of life. I share this, not to encourage you, but to affirm a truth. No one stands outside. No one arrives late. No one is left out. You do not need to wait for a sign. The moment you receive, your entire life begins moving in harmony with that receiving. And if these are the last words I leave with you, I want them to be simple. Live as someone who knows they are given to. Think as someone who already has. Walk as someone who belongs. Because the truth is this: you were never lost. You have simply remembered. And when a soul remembers, the universe clears a path for it.